Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Off on Tangents. This is episode 9, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Well, I'm in Campbelltown, Jake's in
I'm
Wollongong.
in Wollongong.
Yeah, and
Social distancing to the extreme.
yeah, social distancing episode number 3, I think. Since we had the whole COVID. But yeah, we like to welcome you back, guys. And appreciate the support and the views in these tough times. But yeah, we wanted to continue on with our the Last Stand series, just a little bit of a summary of it, and just our thoughts and insights into to the Bulls the Bulls dynasty, really. Even though it's called the Last Dance, meaning their last championship, their last while together, it was really more so the whole road to get there as well. So um, this week is going to be about episodes 3 and 4 on Netflix. They release 2 episodes every week, so which is, I suppose, good in a way because it makes you want to
Yeah.
watch the next 2 that come out because you're
But it also
wanting.
means you can't just spam it, man. Like if they released it in one sitting, I'd probably have finished the whole series by now.
Yeah,
Everyone would have.
yeah, they'll binge
But
it,
it
and
makes us space it out.
yeah, and you're right. Yeah, space it out makes you want it. That
Mm.
suspense, So, um, and funny thing, I saw on Facebook that the Last Dance is the most viewed document. It just took over the Carol Baskin documentary on
Oh, really?
Tiger King. Is it Tiger King?
Tiger
Yeah,
King, yeah.
I
You
haven't
haven't
watched
seen
it.
that?
No, I haven't seen it, but
Ah, bro.
it took over that. So, which is pretty good because basketball is not
Because
really
that
a.
was hyped up
Yeah,
for a bit there, eh?
yeah,
But yeah, it's not surprising. It's a good documentary. So, but yeah, I
yeah,
definitely think if you haven't seen Tiger King, bro, it's a pretty
yeah,
interesting series. If you like documentaries, it's pretty ridiculous.
yeah. Well, like it, yeah. Look, we uh we want to start off with the with episode 3, and really this episode, Jake, was about the Detroit Bad Boys, or the Detroit Pistons. Now, a moment ago we were just talking about dynasties, and really in the 80s there were really 3 dynasties that stood out. Yeah, one was the Showtime Lakers, who were coached by
Mm,
coach Pat Riley, and led by Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yeah, they won in that period. They won 5 championships. Now, the other team was the Boston Celtics, led by Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and those boys. Even Danny Ainge, who's the current general manager of that team, was playing in the 80s. So it was, and they won 3 championships in the 80s as well. The third
mm,
team, which the Last Dance shows, is the Detroit Bad Boys. Now they came at the latter period of the 80s. Okay, now I wouldn't call them, arguably, I wouldn't call them a dynasty, but
mm.
they did become like a major threat, and eventually winning 2 NBA championships
Yeah,
in the and 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 the roadblock to the Bulls, winning more, could have had more championships.
yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah.
now the roadblock. Uh, Talk to us, Jake, about the roadblock that the Pistons were to the Bulls in the late 80s. Okay. Uh,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's just like that was obviously the one team that they had to overcome to get from being just Michael was already coming out as like the next great player of the world, and
Yeah.
there was just that one accolade that separated him between Bird and Magic and all those other guys was getting that championship, and
Yeah.
the team that was standing in his way when he was getting to the conference finals was those Pistons. So. Um, they were just that roadblocks for him getting from being the best player to being Michael Jordan to being the greatest of all time, winning
Yeah,
those 6 championships. And they were very, they were called the bad boys for a reason, as as you'll see in the documentary, because they were just a rough bunch of playing guys, and they just did not want to let Michael Jordan win at any cost. So
yeah,
they were a pretty physical team to overcome, and I think in that time, Michael Jordan had to. They changed a lot of things, and a lot of things had to change to get over that roadblock. So I think that his whole, they had to change the coaching staff to go from. What was the coach just before Phil Jackson's name in the documentary?
Doug
Can't remember his
Collins.
name. Doug Collins. They had
Yeah,
to go
Doug
away from
Collins.
him, just giving the ball to Michael Jordan, and they had to implement the triangle offense that Phil Jackson was going to be implementing, and I think that was a big thing in like a big change. Once Michael Jordan got over that, the whole I need to be taking all these shots, or I want to be running the offense, and I'm
Yeah,
going to win a championship and be the greatest. I think once he started to get his teammates involved and start really seeing that, oh wait, it's going to take more than me to win this championship.
correct.
That's
Yeah,
how they overcame that pro block and beat the Pistons. And it's funny because I was sitting there I was watching the fourth episode last night, and I was thinking, without, like, for all the crap that's given to Curse, is it Kurt, the general manager of the time,
very
I can't
Kraus.
remember. Yeah, Kraus. Sorry. So all the crap that's given to Kraus over this it's really the work that he did in getting rid of the Doug Collins, who was just giving Michael the ball and putting in a different coach. He
Yep.
also got rid of a bunch of the other players that Michael Jordan really liked. So he got rid of all the things that Michael Jordan was really for, and much against Jordan. Like, it wasn't very, at the time, the decisions he made weren't popular with Michael Jordan. But at the end of the day, the decisions that he made, that
Yeah.
Jerry Krause made, ended up really getting that team over the hump and getting Jordan
Correct.
those championships. So it's interesting that you see in these episodes, without Jerry Krause, that he wouldn't have those championships. If they had continued going the way that they were going, it wasn't working, and that's what the Detroit Pistons were showing. The way that they were
Yep.
playing, Michael Jordan was scoring 60 points in the playoffs. He'd scored against the Celtics. In
Yeah.
his first time, he'd scored 60 points. He didn't win the series though, and that was happening time and time again in the playoffs for him. He was getting the stats and he was scoring crazy points in the playoffs, but he wasn't actually winning the championship. So I think the Detroit Pistons were that final thing that allowed him to go from being, they allowed him to see that he wasn't going to get there on his own,
Yeah.
and their style of play, that working as a team, he had to obviously implement something similar or something better to beat them. So
Yeah.
they were an
Well,
important team for Michael. Like, whilst he hates them to this day, and there's a lot of bad blood between those teams, they'll probably, like, the most important team to get Michael Jordan to the spot where he is to this day.
yeah,
Like that
correct.
they were the point that stood in the way and got him to evolve into what he became. So
That's right. That's right. And I suppose that, I mean, the bad boys would probably hate the fact that they're the reason why the Bulls became so won the 6 championships. And you're right. Now, the interesting point that you made was the trusting your teammates. Yeah, like now in Collins' offense, he was very one-dimensional, and implementing when Phil Jackson came in, the triangle offense allowed Michael to trust his teammates, like you
yeah,
said. You, the He started. Otherwise, we wouldn't know about these other Bulls plays. Like, they wouldn't be as important to the dynasty if Michael didn't trust him, like John Paxson or Steve Kerr, or like Horace Grant, Bill Wennington. These guys, that they wouldn't have been like there would have been a bunch of no-namers if Michael didn't trust him. And I suppose they wouldn't have won these 6 championships without him. Now,
No.
going back to the bad boys, though, the bad boys, you know, they had Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumas, Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, Dennis Rodman on that team. And they came up with now in the 1989 playoffs when they played the Bulls, they came up with the Jordan rules, which is every time Michael Jordan would go into the paint or attack, or if he ever jumped in the air, they would just make sure he was on the ground. Yeah. And
Terrible.
what other player than Bill Laimbeer to do that? Bill Laimbeer was great at it. And you know what? The refs didn't even do shit. And I wanted to ask you the physicality in the 80s. Do you think a modern day NBA player would last in the 80s? I'm talking Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Kawhi.
You just want to test. You just want to get me to talk some smack about LeBron right now, don't you?
Oh, hand
it's not
checking
going to work
rules.
because I think as like what allows the players back then to survive in that era, but the players now that are playing not to. It's just the difference in era, like the difference in the way it's officiated. I think obviously if it was officiated the same way, players would have to survive in that type of playing, and they would adapt and learn to survive in that.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan is a clear example of that. In those 2 years where he was getting beaten down and they'd implemented that rule, he was getting destroyed and physically beaten. And it is by no definition, like I'm happy with the way that it's gone to not allow that, but because it's pretty disgusting looking at the type of stuff that they could get away with, because it's dangerous for the player. You don't want to see your players getting put through that just to win a basketball game. But in saying that, he had to go through it, and he had to decide, and that was another thing that changed, was his mentality after they got beat the second time by the Pistons. Was he decided, I've got to start putting on some muscle. I've got to get stronger if I want to beat these guys. And I don't think that the people in this day and age would, in this era, would shy away from that as well. If that was the way the game was being played, I'm sure they would be just as, maybe they'd be more injury prone. Maybe we are more coddled in this day and age, and maybe for that reason we'd be like, oh, what the F, they shouldn't be able to get away with that. Maybe our mentality wouldn't allow it, but I think if there hadn't been this shift to the way the NBA is now, and it was always played that way, the players would still be doing it. And I'm sure LeBron physically would be fine in this day and in that era. LeBron is more physically, I would say, more physically gifted than Jordan, like, in terms of his build. I think he would deal with that type of playing. Although he doesn't deal with it now, because in the rules of the NBA, other people, the amount of contact that he gets, other people would get fouls for that, and that's why he doesn't deal with it. It's like, it's not really fair. There's got to be consistency in how you're doing it. So
that's right. No, it's interesting. It's an interesting point you make. Hey, like, what's to say that the guys back in the 80s and 90s won't last in today's league? Today's league is much more faster, more quick paced, more intensity. Yeah. I mean, I reckon the big men in today's league wouldn't last, because they were, back in the 80s, was just half court offense. You know, you just chuck the ball to the big guy and just hope for, you know, a smack bang in the paint. And you're right, it does bother me. It bothers me when, like, the old guys say, oh, today's league is soft and all this. Like, you wouldn't know. Like, maybe you're right, maybe the guys today would adapt and overcome, like Michael Jordan did. But we'll never know. Maybe the guys back then would adapt today in today's league and run faster and shoot 3-pointers. Like, we just never know. And
it's funny that you say that. That exact mentality of people being like, oh, you wouldn't last, when back in my day of playing it. Like, I was saying this last night as we were watching the last episode, and I was saying to my father and my brother, I was saying, Can you imagine in 50 years time when we're talking to our like grandchildren and shit and we're saying, oh, like, can you imagine how much the NBA will have changed by then, that we will be saying,
Yeah.
oh, like they don't play it like we used to play it, like it's
Yeah.
soft and blah, blah, blah. So even at this point, how it is now, we will probably still think back in future, we'll be like, oh no, the players today couldn't last back in our
Yeah.
era. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think that's just what happens as you evolve, and as the game evolves, it will be changing.
Yeah.
So the game's just not the same game as it was back then. It's the by officiating it differently, it completely changed the game by not allowing that type of stuff. The same thing in every sport. The NFL,
Yeah.
it's obviously become more towards protecting the players, which is a really obviously as a fan, you want to see, sometimes you want to see a bit of a biff and you want to see some fighting, and it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun to watch. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I miss the biff in the NRL. Like, I always want them to bring back the biff, but
Yeah.
in terms of the players' safety, it's like, how could we not be evolving towards that with the amount, like, as a progressing society? We can't just still be having a bunch of people that we pay to, batter their bodies for our entertainment. We're not, we're past that as a society. And we need to be, our sports need to be evolving with that, and the players should be protected in
Yeah.
doing that. So that's why I think that the shift in the NBA is a good thing. But I think obviously any player in any era is going to play the way that the game is set up for them to play in that time, and they're going to take advantage of that. So I think
Yeah.
any player would adapt to the era that they're in, and
Correct.
that's why it is almost a futile argument discussing who's the greatest of all time, who's the best, who's the better
Yeah.
between these people. They're playing in two different times, and
Yeah.
it's a futile argument, but it's one that needs to happen all the time because
Yeah.
it just will happen.
Well, let's talk about another big theme that was in the documentary was Dennis Rodman and his, you know, uh, let's say excessive partying life, to put it nicely. And in the episode, he he was quite bored. He said he was bored with playing basketball and he needed some time away from the game. So during the season, he decides to take a plane to Las Vegas and and he just goes ham on anything. I don't know. We don't want to know what he did. All we know is that he was with Carmen Electra at the time, and he was partying away during the season. Yeah. So, talk to us about how the impact of Phil Jackson's like sort of guidance, I suppose, and managing Dennis's personality, Phil's and Michael's management of that, because they were the senior identities in the team, and so talk about how they managed Dennis to come back and
Well, I
manage that
mean,
situation.
Phil, it goes to show the type of coach that Phil was, and he was clearly able to see that each of his players were going to have different needs that he needed to
Yeah,
meet, and obviously Michael Jordan wouldn't have had the way he would have coached Michael Jordan. He was going to have to coach Dennis Rodman completely different because
yeah,
because of how he was. Like, he was a different person, and that was very clear at that point. I think before the Bulls got him, they knew it was going to be a bit of an experiment because
yeah,
he was acting out in San Antonio, and he was sort of going off the rails a bit. And I think Phil Jackson knew that he could, with a bit of leeway, he could get the best out of him. It's almost like it just shows the difference between a good coach and a great coach is what they get out of their players. And sure, some people might be like, "Oh, that it's a dumb idea to let him go mid-season
yeah,
to thing," but who knows? Like, he could have continued playing for the rest of that season without that break, and feel and been like, "Oh, stuff this. If they're not going to give me what I need, I'm not going to give them what they need from me," and just completely shut down for the rest of the season. And without him, they wouldn't have won that championship. So I think it just shows how how in tune with his players Phil Jackson was, and how he knew how to manage them, and he knew how with a little bit of leniency that he would get the best out of Dennis Rodman,
Sure.
and he did in doing so, and so it was, and you can see the respect that in the interviews that they're in the interviews within the documentary, you can see that there is a level of respect between the three guys, Phil Jackson, Dennis Rodman, and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
They all knew that Dennis Rodman had his antics, and he was a little bit, of a liability in the media sort of aspect, but they knew that he was going to bring it on the court. And so there was a level of mutual respect between those guys, where they're like, right, we'll let him get away with this as long as he's bringing it on the court. And you can see that level, that respect still persists today. And I think Rodman, for it, I think what happened was it allowed Rodman to actually respect them back, rather than being like, stuff these guys, and you can tell in his interview how much he respects those guys today, because of how they let him be himself, rather than trying to make him a person that he wasn't, for the good of the team. So they knew that allowing him to be himself was for the best of the team, and that was just shows what type of coach Phil Jackson was. And he obviously, he was I wouldn't have wanted to come against Dennis Rodman on the court, because he was a bad man. And the funny thing I find as well is, looking back, was the battering that he put on Pippen and Jordan in those years where the Detroit Pistons were beating them.
Yeah.
Like, it must have taken it must have taken every ounce of strength in their souls to not just get at each other when Dennis Rodman joined that team. But they obviously knew, Pippen and Jordan must have just been like, we need this guy, because man, it would have been very easy to just never have accepted him into the team. But clearly by then, Jordan's mind state had changed to be like, we need to do whatever it takes to win, and that was the thing that evolved because of all this, because of what they went through with the Pistons.
Correct. So. Yeah. Well, you're like, that's, Dennis was a different being. Like, he was just, very different mindset. His mum kicked him out. I don't know if you remember that in the episode. His mum kicked him out, I think at the age of 18, and sort of had to like defend for himself. So I think that different mindset came from, from his mum kicking, his upbringing. So I mean, it wasn't so much that he didn't care about the game when he left to Las Vegas. It's just more so he just needed a break, and you can see that his love for the game was still there, because when he got thrown out of a game one time, I can't remember what the game was. It was in the episode. Was
it the first time he got thrown out with the Spurs? Is that the time you're talking
about?
No,
with the Bulls. He got thrown out, and Michael was fucking pissed at him.
Oh yeah,
and,
okay, yeah.
And when
it was in the game when Pippen was out, and they weren't. It was just in the '98 season.
Yeah, and Michael just he needed him at the time, and then Dennis knew that, and as soon as Dennis, from that point on, Dennis just said, "Oh, my bad," and never fucked up or anything. So
acknowledged it.
Acknowledged it. So it was, he cared. It's just, it's just personalities.
He obviously had to unwind in his own way.
Correct.
And some people would see that as unconventional, but it worked for him. He at the end of the day, he brought it. He didn't let it get in the way of his team getting to the success that they achieved. So I don't see any issue with how he was managed at all. I think it was a good. There was a good level of mutual respect with everyone in that team, or a good understanding of of everything other than Scottie Pippen's salary. That was the only area where it's like, oh, there's no mutual respect there. That was
Yeah.
just straight up disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, our last theme, theme that we want was pertinent in the episode was Bulls' first championship, their first run. So this is in the 1990 to 1991 season. And your previous point before about Michael Jordan putting on some muscle, having a different mindset, you just knew that something was brewing in Chicago. And from that 90 to 91 season, they were pretty much favorites to come out of the East. But and the thing was that Michael Jordan was like the greatest player on earth, but no championships. And so the year that I suppose he was going to do it, and taking all those beatings from Detroit, was taking its toll on him, and so it was bound. I think the championship was bound to happen. Now, in the 1991 playoffs, they lo and behold, they meet the Pistons again in the conference finals, and what had happened was pretty much swept the Pistons, and
They did sweep them, not pretty much.
They swept them in at the end of the game, game 4. Bill Laimbeer tells all the other players not to shake hands with the Bulls. Now, what's your take? Like, I mean, because Isaiah Thomas makes a good point in the interview. He says when the Celtics, lost to the Pistons in like 89 or whatever, they just walked off the court, didn't even shake hands with them. And basically what he was saying was, like, that was just normal in the game back then. But personally, I think he was just making a fucking excuse. Like, I mean,
it's a poor excuse as well.
it's poor sportsmanship. For me, it's poor. I was always taught to, like, no matter how much of how salty you were, you still would shake their hands and say, "Look, good game." Look, it's just
the
a
first
part
thing
of
you
sport.
learn in when you're 5 years old and you sign up to a sport is learn to shake the hands at the end of the game. I mean, yeah, you're right. It was definitely just an excuse, and Michael says it in his interview where he says, where he blatantly shows there's proof where from the years before, every year when he was beaten by them in that conference final, he shook all their hands at the end of the game. And so then for like after being on the receiving end of that for 2 years and being the bigger man and shaking the hand, to get over that hump and have the other team be like that was just pretty like blatantly disrespectful. And I would be absolutely embarrassed to be a part of that team. To me, like the fact that Laimbeer is behind that is just like, this sums up how much of a grub he must have been of a player, because he was already a grub on the court, but then to show that off the court makes me hate him a little bit more. Even though I don't have any reason to. He just must have had absolute no regard for anyone, any sort of respect for any of the other players. So say what you will about this day and age, how they're like, I think that's a good change in this day and age, how the players are all very for each other. Everyone's very friendly, and everyone takes as a bad thing, or you should be competing with each other. Well, they do compete with each other when it comes to the game, but at the end of the day, there's a mutual level of respect between all the athletes, and they know that they're all at the same level, and they've worked hard to get here.
Correct.
And I don't think you'd see displays like that in this day and age. And I guess that's just, again, showing how the game has changed. And it was obviously to Isaiah Thomas's defense, obviously it had happened from other teams to him. But just because it's happened to you doesn't make it any better. You know what I mean? That just reflects poorly on those Celtics that did it to him. That shows that they obviously weren't great sportsmen either. They had their time. the Celtics, when they did that, they had their 3 championships, they had won. So why couldn't they give the other players their time and give the respect?
Yeah.
Just as why couldn't Detroit, after they've had their 2 championships, do the same for Michael? It's pretty, like, I don't see the other teams doing that as a defense for the Pistons. I just see them as they've all done the complete wrong thing. So
Yeah.
the good thing in this day and age, it doesn't happen, you know.
Yeah. Well, yep. It really, you can see it really bothers them to this day. Like they're still holding grudges and
Yeah,
against each other.
as you would.
But
Well, even in the
none.
next round, against Magic Johnson, like Magic losing in the finals to him, he gave Jordan that he gave Jordan the respect by giving him,
Yeah.
a hug at the end of the game and all that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and he
Well.
could do that in the finals.
Yeah. It's exactly right. Like they overcame that hurdle and they got into the NBA finals against the Lakers, which was a good segue. The pretty much the Lakers, the Showtime Lakers were heading towards the end of their I suppose reign.
Mm,
Given that they had won 5 championships, there wasn't really
pretty
much to
good.
accomplish. Hey, like when you think about it, but 1991 they come up against the Lakers and really game 1 pretty much you thought, well, here we go again. Like the Michael's not going to win this championship. They lost the first game, and then it was pretty much a gentleman's sweep after that. And all I can remember from one of my great memories from Michael Jordan was where he switched. I think it was in game 2 where he switched hands. So he
Oh
got the
yeah,
ball
the
from
layout.
and he was gonna like lay it up or dunk it or something,
He's
and
gonna
then like
dunk it,
and
yeah.
then he switched hands and he laid it up.
Oh,
Oh man, that
it's
was one of the
crazy,
best
isn't it?
things. Yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, talk talk about the impact of winning for the first time, like the emotion of winning for the first time. That Bulls team.
Well, I mean, it was just you just see it in Jordan, in that famous image of Jordan sitting holding the trophy, just bawling his eyes out.
Yeah,
And so it was funny. Someone said it best in, I think it was the center at the time.
Horace Grant, or
Yeah,
was it
it was
Bill
no. It was Bill. Yeah,
Cartwright?
Bill Cartwright.
Yeah.
I've got Luke Longley's name stuck in my head,
No,
but
he
he's in
came
the
later.
later
Yeah,
3. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, you see it best in when he's talking about how up until that point all they'd ever seen was anger and frustration, and then once he'd finally got that championship, all the emotion that he'd built up to that point just overflowed. Like, so I think it must have been just everything he'd built up in his mind had just finally come into fruition, and it
yeah,
just would have been an overwhelming feeling of relief. I guess he's
yeah,
finally gotten that accomplishment that everyone was holding away from him for so long. Oh, he's the best player, but he can't get over that hump. We'd finally gotten there, and um, yeah, I guess it's something that type of experience is something we will never
yeah,
get to feel, because I don't know, I've never been as dedicated as Michael Jordan towards one craft as that, you know, like I don't think I ever feel that much relief from putting in
yeah.
that much work to
I
one
agree.
thing and finally getting it. I don't think I ever know how that feels, and that overwhelming feeling of finally making it. I hope I do, but I just don't think I've ever worked so hard towards something. So it
Yeah.
would just be an overwhelming sensation of joy and relief, I feel.
Well, that's a good closing statement, I suppose. Like that wanting of winning and just overcoming those hurdles and finally reaching your goals, which is obviously what the Bulls did in that first championship. And you know, it I suppose that's a good life lesson as well. When you overcome something and then you finally reach it, it just you feel that that sense of relief and pressure off your shoulders, but happiness as well. So, but yeah, we'll leave it there. Leave it there, guys. Thanks for another episode, for viewing another episode. We hope to bring more content to you guys shortly. Well, of course, we have busy lives as well, but we always want to take our time and talk about what we love. So, but thanks again, guys. We'll leave it there for another episode on Off on Tangents. Until next time, we'll keep doing these Zoom episodes for you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Make sure you're tuning in to the Last Dance if you're not.
Yeah.
So you can get a bit of context.
Yeah. And make sure you like us on Facebook or even YouTube. Just subscribe to our channel. And we'll be on we're on Spotify as well. So thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.